Greetings everyone, I am Renee Yusi.
I am Abigail Bautista.
And I am Abby Piagala, and today we are to present about the analysis of concepts, a philosophical analysis.
But before we start, last week's discussion gave us this brief description on what critical thinkers are and how we get to be one. It was made clear to us that critical thinking is the act of evaluating, judging, and criticizing information to reach a well-supported conclusion. And now, we are to discuss one of the first and fundamental steps to becoming a critical thinker. It is knowing the distinction between a word and a concept. And now I have a question to ask you. Do we think in words or in concepts? Have you ever wondered what comes across our minds when we see or observe something that strikes us? Do we think about them in words, or do we think of images or ideas? But first, let us define these two words. What is a word and what is a concept? So what is a word? According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a word is a noun which means a speech sound or series of speech sounds that symbolizes and communicates a meaning usually without being divisible into smaller parts of units capable of independent use. A second meaning is that it is an entire set of linguistic forms produced by combining a single base with various inflectional elements without change in the part of speech elements. So basically they represent ideas, but they are not the ideas themselves. It is vital in communication, hence it is important for us to have a clear understanding of it. An example is this chair. This is a chair. The word chair is merely a linguistic label that we give to the said object. Now, on the other hand, a concept is a noun which means something conceived in the mind, a thought or a notion. It is an abstract or generic idea generalized from particular instances. An example is these different types of chairs, and they equate to its chairness. In this case, the word chairness is the concept. It is the mental abstraction that all these objects, despite their differences in their colors, types, shapes, have the same purpose, which is for sitting. It exists only in our minds, even without words. An example I can provide is how a toddler, who doesn't really have an idea on how to say the word chair, still knows that it is in fact a chair, because they could recognize that all these different objects serve the same function. So, in a nutshell, if a word is composed of letters, a concept is composed of ideas. And now, we get to understand how concept is the core of human understanding. To form concept is in fact a skill that all of us should have. They are of importance as with them, we are able to make sense of what we perceive. They play a very crucial role in thought, language, and communication. They are powerful tools for organizing information, making inferences, and planning for the future. Without the ability to form these concepts, knowledge in human life will be deemed impossible, as our thoughts and perceptions will remain scattered and disconnected with everything that surrounds us. And now we get to talk about John Locke. So who is John Locke? He was born in 1632 and died in 1702. He was a British philosopher, an Oxford academic, and a medical researcher. He also wrote an essay concerning human understanding in 1689, which went on to be one of the first great defenses of modern empiricism and concerns itself with identifying limits of human understanding in respect to a wide spectrum of topics. For him, concepts or ideas exist in the mind, while words are merely signs used to express those ideas, meaning confusion arises when words are unclear or detached from the concepts that they represent. Tabula rasa aligns with the overall theory of empiricism, which means the mind in its hypothetical primary blank or empty state before receiving any outside impressions. It is then stated that knowledge comes from sensation, or the transformation of an environmental stimulus into a neural impulse to which the brain can use to make an organism aware of its surroundings, or true reflection, to which in John Locke's theory of ideas means one's awareness that one is thinking, and to which people recapture their experience, think about it, mull over, and evaluate the said experience. So now you all might be wondering, how are concepts formed? Well, according to John Locke, all things that exist in this world are particulars, making it difficult for us to identify or even name the smallest details in this world. With this, general terms are invented, to which he called the process of abstraction, which means the cognitive process of isolating or abstracting, which is a common feature or relationship observed in a number of things, or the product of such a process. With these, it's easier for us to identify a group of particulars, leading to the formation of a general idea. These are the following examples of the said process. First is how even though these group of cats have different breeds, types, and even color, we can perceive them as simply cats. And these fruits, despite them being different in terms of their size, shape, we can still perceive them or collectively call them as fruits. And of course, this color wheel, despite of its many shades and hues, we still collectively call them as colors. And now, from a rationalist perspective, we can also state that concept is native to our intellect. This statement is highly similar to the philosophical view of rationalism, which emphasizes reason and logic as the primary source of knowledge. They are, in fact, a general means in acquiring knowledge in different forms, just like how truth and justice are innate from our own minds and are not acquired from experience. Other more examples include moral ideas, geometric forms, and universal ideas. Concept indeed is the building block of knowledge. They are crucial to such psychological processes such as categorization, inference, memory, learning, and decision making, as they allow our minds to continuously categorize and organize our thoughts into these groups, allowing our minds to make a sensible observation or categorization, hence making it the basic unit of philosophical analysis as well as critical thinking. And now we might think about these questions. Is it possible to build concepts and go through the process of abstraction without using our words? I personally think that it would be possible to build concepts without our words, through our innate ideas. However, language sharpens and shapes those thoughts that we have, making the concept more efficient if formed and shaped with the usage of words. Another question is that, is knowledge possible without language? How about thinking? Then again, I believe that yes, it would still be possible for us to form ideas and concepts even without language. An example is with babies, as they are still able to form ideas and think even without the power of language. Language, however, would strengthen, refine, and make it easier for us to share and communicate these ideas that we have. To sum up, concepts indeed are the basic unit of philosophical analysis. We also had a deeper understanding about its distinction with words, as well as the process to be able to form them. Now, it is time for us to delve deeper onto how we analyze them.
Now that we've gained an understanding of what words and concepts are in the first module, the next step is to analyze how these concepts actually work when we use them. So, here's a question for you. When we hold a concept in mind, do we focus on what it means, or on what thing it actually refers to? Well, that's exactly what brings us to our next topic, the extension and intension of concepts. These are simply two different ways of looking at the very same concept. One zooms in on its meaning, and while the other zooms out to its reach. Philosophers of language agree that every concept can be analyzed in two ways. First, you can look at the extension, the kind of things that are members of the domain of the concept. This simply means identify all the things that belong to that concept. Second, you can look at the intention. These are the traits, set of traits, characteristics, or even functions that are shared by the members and differentiate them from the other groups. Let's take the concept bat as an example. The extension of bat includes all bats, whether small enough to fit on your thumb or large enough to have a wingspan of several feet. But just knowing the extension doesn't tell us what bats really are. To understand their nature, we need to shift to the intention. This tells us what makes bats unique in the animal kingdom. And the key trait is that the bats are the only mammals that are capable of sustained flights, which is something no other mammal can do. So in short, extension shows us the members of the concept, while intention shows us the traits that define them. In logic, extension and intention are correlative words. That means they always go together when analyzing a concept. Intention points to the internal content of a concept, basically its formal definition, while extension points to its range of applicability, which are the actual objects it refers to. For example, the intention of the term ship is a vehicle conveyance on water. Its extension include cargo ships, passenger ships, battleships, and sailing ships. So again, intention equals definition, and extension equals the members that fall under it. So to help you gain a deeper understanding about the extension and intention of concepts, here are more examples that I've prepared for you. First is the concept dog. Its extensions are chihuahuas, huskies, golden retrievers, aspens, while its intention is a domesticated mammal of the species Canis familiaris. The second is a student. Its extension are all the learners currently enrolled, like us in this class. The intention is a person formally engaged in study. And the third is a smartphone. The extension are iPhone, Samsung, Huawei, and other mobile devices, while its intention is a portable device with computing and communication forms. When the intention of a concept becomes very precise and clearly defined, it turns into what we call an essential property. This means that possessing just one specific trait is the necessary and the sufficient condition for something to be a member of the concept's extension. For example, in biology, many classifications are based on essential properties, like the concept mammal. The single essential property is the possession of mammary glands. Without this trait, an animal cannot be considered a mammal. That's why even whales, platypuses, and elephants are considered mammals even though they don't look alike. It's because they all share this one essential property. Another concept is the example of a triangle. Its essential property is exactly having 3 sides. Without this, it's not a triangle. That's it, no exception. In reality, most of the concepts in our vocabulary don't require an essential property. But the philosophical view called essentialism argues otherwise. It says that for a concept to be truly meaningful, it must have one essential property in common across all members. This was the dominant view in philosophy of language for a long time, until Austrian-born British philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein challenged it with a different perspective in his well-known book called Philosophical Investigations. Wittgenstein challenged the essentialist view by asking us to think about games. Consider board games, ball games, card games, and even Olympic games. Now, what single trait is common to all of them? Is it competition? Not really, because some games, like solitaire, don't need competition. Is it amusement or enjoyment? Not always. Think of professional athletes under pressure, not necessarily having fun. Wittgenstein reminds us that don't say there must be something common, or they would not be called games, but look and see whether there is something common to all. He emphasized not to think, but look. Because when you actually look, you won't find a single essence. What you'll find instead are patterns of similarities which are overlapping and crisscrossing, but never just one essential property. This is where Wittgenstein introduces the idea of family resemblance. Think of a family photo. Not everyone has the same eyes, the same nose, or the same smile. But across the family members, you'll see overlapping similarities like maybe the hair, maybe the cheekbones, or maybe the voice. Wittgenstein explains it like this. The strength of the trend does not reside in the fact that some one fiber runs through its whole length, but in the overlapping of many fibers. That's exactly how concepts like games work. They don't share one trait in common. Instead, they're held together by a network of similarities, a family resemblance of traits and characteristics. So, instead of one essential property, concepts can still be stable and meaningful because of these resemblances. In conclusion, concepts are analyzed in terms of extension and intention. The extension, in which it identifies the members belonging to it, and its intention, which specifies the defining traits. The intention of a concept may be understood in two ways. It can be seen as an essential property where one necessary characteristic defines all members, or through a family resemblance where meaning arises from overlapping similarities rather than a single defining trait. Together, these perspectives remind us that concepts are not only about classifications, but also about understanding the different ways meaning can be structured.
So, to be able to use a concept is to be able to understand or comprehend it clearly, and this is achieved through a shared understanding in the use of words. But how do we use a word that can produce a shared understanding? And this brings us to Ludwig Wittgenstein's theory of meaning in terms of the use of a word. So through this, we'll be able to describe how a word acquires meaning, distinguish ambiguous and vague concepts, avoid useless verbal controversies, and apply a cardinal rule in critical thinking. Taking on a meaning. So philosophers agree that a word takes on a meaning through how it is used orally or in written form by people from the same verbal community. And according to Wittgenstein, the meaning of a word is its use in the language. So Wittgenstein focuses on how people actually use words in real-life conversations. Many philosophers, however, use a language game or the way of talking or the usage of words that has no form of life. This means using words that are too complicated or rarely understood in day-to-day conversations and is considered to be artificial by Wittgenstein. This means that their way of using language does not fit real-life situations and therefore their language games become unplayable. So for this reason, using a language game that is understandable and capable of producing a shared understanding makes it playable for most people. So next we have playing a language game. So in many languages, words can be spelled alike but take on different meanings. So maybe these can be considered as homograms. So similar to the previous topic, let us use the word bat as an example. So in one language game, a bat can refer to a rodent. However, in another, it can refer to the instrument used in the sports baseball. So the word might be spelled and pronounced the same way, however, it conveys a different meaning. So here are more of our examples. We have watch, so it can refer to an object that tells time or to view. And we also have park, which can refer to a place of leisure or to bring a vehicle to stop. So this makes it evident that the uses of words in ordinary language games are full of similar examples because most of them have more than one meaning or usage. This shows that to understand a meaning of a certain word is to understand how it is used in a language game. Therefore, to share a common understanding of a word in a conversation is to share a language game. And for our next slide, we have being still, the conventional usage. So according to lexicographers or the authors or editors of a dictionary, a word is created when it is used for the first time. And when it becomes commonly used in the same way, it becomes part of many language games and it takes on a conventional or standard usage. So now let us take a look at some examples. So the first word is the word car. So when you hear the word car, you usually just think of the four-wheeled road vehicle. And the next word is marriage, which is a formally recognized union between two people in a relationship. So when you say marriage, you think of this meaning. And the last one is the word shoe, which is a very simple word. and usually just conveys one meaning, which is a covering intended to protect and comfort the foot. So this establishes a common ground or a shared meaning of a word. However, as language evolves fast and generations pass, new meanings are derived from words. So this takes us to our next slide, distinguishing games, ambiguous and vague. So through using words in different contexts, a conventional word may be modified and used uniquely, acquiring many different uses in a language game. Therefore, the word becomes ambiguous or capable of being understood in two or more ways. However, when a word is used so loosely that it becomes difficult to identify its meaning in the language game, the use has become vague, which means it is not clearly defined, grasped, or understood. Consequently, as words are used in different language games, especially as newer generations come to be, new usages and meanings of words emerge that become popular or mainstream in the newer generation's vocabulary. However, these words may deviate from their original meaning, causing difficulty in understanding. Next, we have avoiding controversies. So as words come to evolve to become ambiguous or even vague, misunderstandings become common as people often utter the same word but use it in different ways. However, most people tend to not clarify the particular meaning of the word that they use, which differs from someone else's usage. So let us use the word love as an example. So the word love carries many different connotations, right? And this makes its meaning unclear. So to one person, it might mean receiving constant affection, but to the other person, it might mean giving space. So this might result in confusion or a disagreement between the two people. Contrarily, there are situations where uttering the same word can lead to a purely verbal agreement even though their intended meanings differ. Although they are playing different language games, they fail to recognize this. So let's take I love you, for example. So I love you can have many different meanings. So to one person, it might be conveyed to be romantic, but to the other person, they might mean it to be platonic. So they both use the same sentence, but don't realize that they're playing different language games. Therefore, as language is fast to change and adapt, being able to understand the language games used in conversations is essential in avoiding controversies. Clarifying the particular usage of words may result in a common or shared understanding, and lastly, this may also highlight the importance of a broad vocabulary. But how do we actually know how to avoid these controversies? This takes us to our next slide, taking note of a cardinal rule. So as misunderstandings arise from different language games, it is important to know information about the intention and extension of a word. So in a dispute over a term, an answer should not be accepted unless provided with a clear statement of the intention and given some examples of the extension of a concept. In this way, the answer will reveal whether the word is being used in the same way or differently. So to simply put it, the cardinal rule in critical thinking is to never take part in any discussion or verbal dispute unless you are sure that both of you are using the word in the same way. And to conclude, it is important to be able to recognize differences in how language is used in conversations and in writing. Since words are used in different ways and have different meanings, the best way to reach a shared understanding is to know how a word is used in a language game.
And finally, we move on to the different types of concepts, though we have to be aware that these classifications are neither fixed nor final, as they may still continue to change and evolve. So now, for the first classification to be discussed, it is the empirical concept. These are concepts that refer to a phenomena or process that can be understood through sensation, direct experiences, observation, rather than reasoning or logic. They are not innate, they are tangible and visible to our senses. They follow John Locke's tabula rasa, or the idea of a mind as a blank slate. They cannot exist without any sensory input. One of the few examples are how we see, touch, and taste lechon many times during birthday parties growing up. And from these experiences, we form the concept of a lechon. Next is how we recognize the metallic shine of gold from our medals growing up. Hence, we build the concept of gold. And finally, we experience being flushed from the spicy taste of various spicy foods that we had growing up. With this, we form our own concept of spicy. And now, for the second type of concept to be discussed is the theoretical concept. These are concepts that are not visible or observable through our senses, but are only to be accessed through sensory extending devices such as microscopes and telescopes. They are created through abstract reasoning and theory building, which is quite the exact opposite of empirical concepts. They are also often observed in the fields of science and mathematics. Examples include: first is gravity, where we cannot physically see gravity, but through years of research, we had a deeper understanding of what it is and how it works. Next is the concept of infinity. We are not able to physically observe or perceive infinity, yet it is something that we encounter, especially in the field of mathematics. Next are electrons. They are naturally invisible to the naked eye, but they are delved into and studied further through physics, scientific, and mathematical theories. Next are evaluative concepts. Concepts such as the moral compass, the good and the bad, the light and the darkness, the good and the evil fall under too. They are not just sensory observations, nor abstract ideas, but are concepts that require judgment, assessment, and its attachment to values. A few examples include social norms, how people judge and categorize certain behaviors and actions as something proper or improper. Next is ethics, how people assess whether something equates to something good or bad. And last example are aesthetics, how people judge and perceive something as either beautiful or something that is not.
Now, moving on to fictitious concepts. So, these concepts have clear meanings as we are able to understand what they are supposed to be. However, they are purely constructed by imagination and only exist in stories. Therefore, they do not truly exist. Some claim that they are real, however, there is no proof of their actual empirical existence. Now let us take a look at some examples. So the first one are vampires. So there has been no evidence of the undead coming back to life and feeding off of human blood. And next we have werewolves. So of course there is no proof or any scientific explanation of individuals who can actually shapeshift into a wolf. And lastly we have dragons. So these are very popular in fairy tales when we were young, but they remain as fiction and there's no solid evidence of the existence of these serpent-like creatures. Now let us move on to the metaphysical concepts. So these are concepts that are fundamental in reality, and these concepts do not take up an empirical form. They are immaterial, have no weight, no mass, and cannot be located in space. But some are believed to be able of interacting with the physical world. But these concepts cannot be broken into parts, nor can be destroyed as they are eternal. These concepts can be difficult to classify between empirical, metaphysical, abstract, and fictitious. Now let us take a look at some examples of metaphysical concepts. So the first one is time. So time goes beyond human senses. It cannot be located, touched, nor seen. It also raises questions about it being an illusion or whether it is even real. Next, we have the soul. So a soul is believed to be a fundamental characteristic of a human or even actually in animals that also goes beyond human senses, and it is believed to be part of a being's identity and consciousness. And the last one, a very popular one, is the concept of a god or gods. So they are believed to exist beyond the physical world and cannot be seen. They also do not have a beginning nor an end.
Next is the dispositional concept. Dispositional concepts are a bit different from ordinary ones. They don't point to a trait that you can directly see or observe right away. Instead, the trait only becomes observable if a certain operation or test is performed. The first example is magnetic, but you won't know it just by looking. You have to test it by bringing iron filings near it. If they stick, then the object is magnetic. The second example is elastic. We only know something is elastic if we stretch it. The third is the temperature. We know it by measuring, not just by simply looking. So in short, dispositional concepts describe a potential or tendency revealed only under the right conditions. The last one is called the analytic or abstract concepts. Analytic concepts are abstract in nature, hence it's called the abstract concept also. So they do not exist in the physical world, nor can they be directly observed through the senses. Instead, they are creations of the mind, existing only as conceptual entities. So the examples include numbers, as the concept of numbers such as 1, 2, 3, and so on up to infinity are analytic concepts. Even 0 as a set with no members belong here. The second is circles. Its definition is precise, an infinite number of points equidistant from a center. However, no drawn circle can fully meet this requirement, making every circle we see only an approximation of the true concept. So, in short, analytic concepts are abstract and unobservable. They only exist in thought and are used in fields like logic, mathematics, and geometry as powerful tools for understanding.
That is all that we have for today. Once again, I am Renee Yusi.
Again, I am Aditya Gala.
And I am Abigail Bautista.
And thank you so much for listening.